Hello Internet, I'm Frank Baldwin aka Sandy Brushtail and welcome to my second season of Furry Fandom Stories, where I take a look back at my own experiences within the fandom and also give you a rundown on furry events I've been to and also introduce you to some furry comics and cartoons that I think furries should be more familiar with. And kicking off my second season, I'm going to give you the rundown of Just for the Weekend 2019. Conventions are a big part of the fandom. It's a time where you can get out of your hometown, your home county, or even your own country and have 3 to 4 days of bouncy furry goodness. They're also great to socialise, dance the night away, or just get happily drunk. But when it comes to the UK furry scene, the choice of conventions to attend is limited. All of the big conventions seem to be in North America, cons like Midwest Fur Fest, AnthroCon and Furry Weekend Atlanta. Even the Canadians are hitting it off, with cons like Vernal Equinox, Furry and Vancouver. The two big conventions here in the UK are Confuzzled and ScotiaCon. However, that hasn't stopped UK furries coming together and organising. There are 2 other UK events on the cusp of getting big. Furcation and this, Just for the Weekend, being held at the Bristol Filton Holiday Inn over this year's Easter weekend. This would be JFTW's 4th year running. So, on to the convention itself. How did this one turn out? You know how these things start. Catch a train down to Bristol Parkway, taxi to the hotel. One thing I did notice right off the bat was it felt like there were more people there. JFT 2018 seemed to have a smaller number of attendees, and that made the hotel feel that little bit emptier. If you've been watching my channel or going through my Twitter feed, you might have noticed that I've had a big upgrade to my furry gear. Isn't he lovely? This would be the first time that I've actually properly fursuited at a convention, so this was going to be an education. There was one thing that did dampen my spirits when I had a look at the convention schedule. Registration open. Opening ceremony. Oh yeah, Price is Right. Ooh, karaoke. Let's see. Yep, fursuit walks. No. Where is it? Fursuit walk. Yeah. Okay. Fursuit walk starts at. Wait. Hang on. Where are the dances? Where? There's no sodding dances. Strike one! One of the big aspects where a convention can truly shine is the dances for the attendees. Anybody who's been to a con can honestly say that one of the big parts of enjoyment for a furry convention is the nightlife. Okay, to be perfectly honest, the dance floor at JFD last year was dead, but at least have something on for the fursuiters. Just a DJ playing some cheese on Saturday night would have sufficed. As for the hotel itself, not as grandiose in presentation as a Hilton, but Holiday Inn single accommodations tend to have more room and they used to have mini fridges. Much to my dismay when I had brought drinks with me into the convention and had no way of keeping them cold. But one aspect where the Holiday Inn actually excelled, air conditioning that actually works. Whilst I was waiting for the opening ceremony to start, I just went around with my camera taking photos, and by late afternoon, JFT 2019 was officially open. The theme for this year was movie monsters, kaiju movies, that kind of thing. And after the opening ceremony, it was time for Shadow Raccoon's Price is Right. If you're watching this in the States, then I have no need to tell you about Price is Right. However, it wasn't really a TV staple here in the UK. It did run for a few seasons over here, but it didn't really gain a place in the public eye. The premise is that contestants come up on stage and guess the price of prizes, and if they're close enough, they win that prize. Pre-selected members of the audience went up against each other to compete for fabulous prizes, such as
Tomato basil, really inflatable present. This tastefully designed model of Nick Wilde. Then why not lighten things up with the cute No! Spend countless hours putting on your own magic show or start up a double. It's time to pack your bags. We are sending you to a fantastic day out to Litchfield City.
The quality of the prizes did vary. There were some that were just silly, yet there were some that I wouldn't mind owning myself. Saying that, when one of the contestants wasn't happy with their prize, I found this shoved down the back of my t-shirt. Great movie! Shadow's Price is Right was one of the big highlights of the convention for me. Audience participation was a nice touch, and I was so invested that I completely marked out when this happened. Give Shadow Raccoon's Price is Right 5 stars out of 5, and I'm not saying that just because he's my friend. A first-class performance by Shadow, Theodore and Regdare. Really enjoyed this. Later that evening I decided to go out in fursuit properly. I like to think that I'm building up a tolerance for the heat that builds up when I'm in fursuit. The first time I put the head on, I lasted for about 20 minutes before I needed to duck into the fursuit lounge to cool off. I rested for 20 minutes, went out again for another half an hour before ducking in again. It was so nice not having to worry about my makeup running, and that is a huge advantage. Also, I noticed that more fursuiters wanted to interact with me more, and more photographers wanted to take photos. Well, you couldn't really hug fursuiters whilst I was in makeup. I decided not to go to Fursuit Fiasco this year, mainly because, first, I had forgotten when it was on, and two, I did participate in Fursuit Fiasco last year with full makeup, and I was the first one eliminated. I wear the 00 for a reason. But after I de-suited, I went to karaoke at the main stage, and after getting to sing twice, I decided to turn in for the night. Fursuit walk was in the morning. I will give JFTW some credit when it comes to their fursuit walk, whereas Confuzzle's fursuit parade is just a group of fursuiters shuffling around the ground floor of the Metropole Hilton. For JFTW's fursuit walk, we actually went into Bristol. All attendees who managed to reserve a seat on the bus were herded on board and then driven into the city itself. First up along the way was Clifton District, where we had a group photo with the suspension bridge in the background. Then it was back on the bus and we were driven from Clifton to the city centre to Millennium Square, where another group photo opportunity, and also getting a chance to mingle with the public, so to speak. Then we walked across the river at the waterfront to Queen Square for yet another group photo, and then it was back on the bus and back to the hotel. The Fursuit Walk is one event that JFTW does right. We actually go out in public and suit, as opposed to shuffling around a hotel and trying not to trip over the tail of the fursuiter in front of us. As for the rest of that day, I did manage to take some photos of suitors, and I actually suited a little bit myself. The only other event of note that I went to on Saturday was the fursuit dance competition. Whenever I go to Confuzzled, I don't show all that interest in the fursuit dance competition. Saying that, I first went along to the dance comp at JFTW 2017 and I was entertained. Dance routines vary from being simple to being overly energetic and elaborate. For what I've seen from footage of the dance competition at Confuzzled, there seems to be this mentality of overdoing it, and when you overdo it, you tend to hurt yourself. Whereas the dance competition at JFTW, the contestants seem to be much more loose and relaxed. I'm going to give the dance competition 3 stars out of 5. For me, it was something to attend on a Saturday afternoon. It was organised well, and for the most part, I was entertained. In lieu of fursuit dances, Saturday night was movie night. So, what were they showing? Slut! Asshole! Sorry. Don't know what came over me there. Now, I just want to set one thing straight. I don't hate the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's a good movie, but I couldn't help but think, really? Rocky Horror Picture Show? I'm like, I can understand it. I mean, it's a musical spoof of the old Mad Scientist movies, but I thought that the convention's theme was more about kaiju movies and movie monsters. What was wrong with movies like Reptilicus? The Land That Time Forgot? Damnation Alley? I've got one that would have been perfect. Hell Comes to Frogtown. But afterwards, they were showing this. Sure, why not? I decided to skip movie night. After the fursuit dance competition, I went out with a couple of friends to get something to eat. And then, when I got back to the hotel, I decided to do a little bit more in the evening. The final day of the convention. In the morning, there was motor furs, and you know what I say, if you're both a petrol head and a furry, go along to them. Go have a look. I was in 2 minds whether or not to stay for the closing ceremony. Due to some catering issues at lunchtime, the closing ceremony was actually postponed by about half an hour. But in the end, I decided to stay. During the closing ceremony, there was an auction, and it's where I got this poster here. I paid 80 quid for that. I will admit that during the closing ceremony, I was a little bit narky because, well, I was thinking, oh God, this is dragging on. I have a train to catch. I've got to be back in Gloucester by a certain time. For the charity this year, just for the weekend 2019, managed to raise over £4,000. Then, after the closing ceremony, I got my bags and then was trained back to Gloucester. My final grade for just for the weekend 2019 is a solid B. And this is mainly to do because of the lack of fursuit dances. Positives: a hotel with air conditioning that actually works. It was my first convention where I properly fursuited. Shadow's Price is Right, definitely an up. And the fursuit walk. We actually went into Bristol to suit and not just shuffle around a hotel. Negatives: first of all, no fursuit dances, except for the dead dog. Not all attendees would be staying for the dead dog. Second was the bare bones schedule. When you look at the schedule for JFTW 2019, there was not that many events going on. But I have a feeling that's to do with other people actually coming up with ideas and not really anything to do with the convention directors at all. Thirdly was the catering troubles with the hotel, but that was more of a hotel issue and not really a convention issue. If there are any more negatives, then it's really a result of me nitpicking in a way, because I like to think that maybe I've been spoiled by Confuzzled. JFTW and Confuzzled are 2 completely different cons. They approach the situation differently, and that's something we seriously need to remember. Looking back on just for the weekend 2019, the big thing for me was This was the first convention I attended where I've traditionally fursuited. I didn't use any makeup or any prosthesis. For me, that felt like an end of an era. I've been using face paint since 2011. See, back then I was dead poor. I couldn't afford any decent furry gear of any kind. Sure, I had a tail and I had a headband with fox ears on them. But for the paws and sleeves, not these ones, but the ones I had for Confuzzled 2012, I made those myself. And this is something to reflect upon when I'm at Confuzzled. Because yes, I'll get less of the disapproving looks and the mutters of, it's not real fursuit, not real fursuit. But I have a feeling those mutters will now be replaced by, ha ha, you don't have a mixed candy or don't hug cacti fursuit head. Ha ha, it's rubbish. Ha ha. Before signing off this video, I want to give a couple of shout outs. First of all, a big thank you to the convention directors and the convention staff for putting on Just for the Weekend 2019. A big thank you to the Bristol Filton Holiday Inn for hosting our little menagerie. Shout outs to a lot of you furry fuzzbutts, too many to mention. And that wraps up my first episode of my second season of Furry Fandom Stories. Remember, if you like this episode, please feel free to like, share and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at SandyBFox, and I will hopefully will be seeing you at Confuzzled late May Bank Holiday Weekend. I'm Frank Baldwin, aka Sandy Brushtail, and I will see you again for another Furry Fandom Story. Until then, take care.